So let's talk about the science behind this before we get into our exercise. There are two hormones that I talk about a lot. These are the two hormones. These are my two favorite hormones. Can y'all guess what these are? It's close. It's crust. Well, come on. What's the other one? What do I talk about all the time? Oxytocin. Cortisol and oxytocin. Whenever it comes to teamwork, whenever it comes to sales, whenever it comes to any business, these are the two hormones that you're going to deal with the most. Okay. Cortisol, high blood pressure, fight or flight. The reason you get up in the morning is because cortisol kicks you out of bed. It's like, wait, my alarm went off, so I need to go into it. But there's a healthy amount of urgency. There's a healthy amount of that. And then there's the unhealthy amount. Okay. Whenever you have high dopamine levels from scrolling on TikTok or whatever you're doing, and then you crash cortisol as well. Oxytocin is the bonding hormone. Whenever it comes to a team mentality, whenever it comes to working together, the more oxytocin that you can produce, the more that you're going to bond with your teammates and the stronger your team is from a scientific perspective. So this is a graph. So cortisol levels, stress hormone, oxytocin levels, bonding hormone, associated effects. High transparency. So whenever you're very transparent, you are going to emit low cortisol levels and high oxytocin levels. Whenever you go in and say, hey, listen, I really don't know what I'm talking about. In your mind, you seem weak, but what you're actually doing is from a hormonal perspective, you're letting that person know, hey, listen, I'm in a position to receive feedback. And then it opens up the possibility for you to bond with that person. Whenever it comes to a team, whenever you look at the Thunder, right? They're super successful right now. What is one of the actions that they do after every single game that shows the fact that they, whenever it comes to their egos, whenever it comes to their common goals, that they're very in line? What's one activity that they do?
To each other whenever you get interviewed.
Join press conference, right? They all join in the show together. They all have a common vision. That takes a significant amount of transparency. That's teamwork. Reduced stress. Higher transparency often leads to reduced levels of cortisol, resulting in lower stress and anxiety. Enhanced bonding. Elevated oxytocin promotes trust, empathy, social bonding, and leading to stronger relationships. A team is just strong relationships. You already realize that typically whenever it comes to whatever your work life is, you're going to spend more time with those people than you are with your significant others. So like the people that you work with on a consistent basis, like there should be a very high level of transparency, especially in what your role is. Because if one person is not being transparent, again, let's go back to the analogy of you're out in the field and you sign a bad deal and you don't tell anybody about it. Well, let's say you got a CSR, right? You don't tell them about it. You're like, I'm not going to talk about the fact that I just promised the homeowner that I was going to give him the gutters, I was going to give him the siding, I was going to give him this. And then I said all of it and put my foot in my mouth. And then I walked inside to close the deal and realized they have an ACV policy. Oh, crap. I'm guilty of that, by the way. Whenever I first did sales, roofing sales, like I definitely did that one time. And I was like, oh, crap. Now, I've run a company before. I understand what that happens. So like I just told the person, I said, hey, listen, I screwed up. You know what ended up happening? The person ended up saying, well, thanks for being honest with me. And then we figured it out. And we ended up building it. It ended up being super profitable because I just said, hey, listen, I told you some stuff outside that was not accurate because I was doing it based off of the assumption that you had this kind of policy and you actually have this kind of policy. This means that we're gonna have to do this. If this breaks the deal, if this busts the deal, I'm sorry, you can go to another person. I'm like, it's fine. Guess what ended up happening? All right, how much do I need to write you a check for? People respect transparency. Because what's gonna happen? You're just gonna kick the ball down the road, not make any money, and then you're gonna do a bunch of jobs that aren't profitable? What good does that do for anybody? Because your ego is too big in the moment to admit that you were wrong. Right? So whenever you're transparent, and this is the other beautiful thing, whenever it comes to dealing with clients, I don't care what industry you're in, I don't care what you're doing. Oh, shoot, I messed up. Dude, opens yourself up for that person. Empathy. It invites them to be empathetic. That sounds super weird. And now you might deal with some people that are real high cortisol and they just use it, come in and smash it. Who cares? Doesn't matter. Every once in a while, someone's going to do that. Tells you the kind of person they are. Most people aren't going to do that. Most people are going to respect it, honor it. Yesterday, I went to a place. It was hilarious. Went to a place, ordered a smoothie, ordered the same thing every single time. Get the smoothie, I'm walking out the door, take a sip. Right when I take a sip, I'm like, oh, dude, this guy made it completely wrong. Turn around and look at the guy, and the guy's standing there looking at me, knowing that he made the smoothie wrong. Like on his face, he knows as soon as I take a sip, he was waiting to see if I was going to walk out the door. And I walked back and handed it to him, and I was like, dude, I get this all the time. He's like, I'll remake it. And he went back and remade it. Now, he could have extended the invite to me, but typically that's the way that people will work, right? He just, man, it was watery. He made the next one, and he was like, I promise you that one's going to be smooth. And I was, thank you. Guess what? He admitted he was wrong, fixed the problem quick, hit me up. Moderate transparency, right? I'll be transparent sometimes, but I'm not really going to give it all there. Well, guess what you're going to get? Moderate cortisol levels, moderate oxytocin, balanced state. Moderate levels of transparency can help maintain balanced state of cortisol and oxytocin, fostering a stable social environment and moderate stress levels. Now, whenever it comes to this right here, there is a certain amount of discretion that is needed whenever it comes to transparency, which is what I added today. We're going to talk about that at the very end. So you do want to stay somewhat balanced, but whenever you're trying to bond, whenever you are trying to grow, it's really good to have that. To be completely honest with your significant other, sometimes you want to stay in the moderate area. Maybe be this with your accountability partner. If you don't have an accountability partner, I would highly suggest it. If you don't have an accountability partner, go pay a therapist. Someone that you can tell it all to stay in this state. And then maybe sometimes with your significant other, you need to be somewhat moderate so that you can actually recognize, okay, when do I need to be highly transparent? When do I need to be a little bit moderate, right? So there are places for each one of these levels. And then the last one is low transparency. If you don't tell anybody anything, you got it all figured out in your mind. I don't need help from anybody. You're going to produce high cortisol levels, high blood pressure. Do you know what high blood pressure does to you long term? Kills you. You want to know the different wonderful diseases that are caused by high blood pressure? Dementia, cancer, heart disease, all the things that we love. I actually just talked to a guy the other day. I talked to a guy the other day that he actually has started reversing his aging, literally. So he went to the doctor, and the doctor's like, hey, dude, like, you're going to have a heart attack. And because how high stress his life was, how much stuff he held on to. And he was like, man, I started living a life of transparency. And as soon as I started living a life of transparency, went back to the doctor, like a year later, the doctor was like, hey, dude, I don't know what you've done, but like your levels are completely normal. And you're actually like, you're reversing your aging right now. He did a lot of other things, but he said that was one of the top factors whenever it came to his health. Lowering his blood pressure, started getting transparent. If you look at the boomer generation, I mean, they were told grit your teeth and just work through it, right? Now, there is a certain amount of truth in relation to depending on what your task is. If you are doing manual labor, there's a certain amount of cortisol that you need to engage, there's a certain amount of work that you need to engage to get a task done. That's why God gave us that hormone, right? But whenever you're out there digging a trench, you're probably not looking to bond with someone else. Right? You're looking to get the job done. Now, a smart person is bonding with a bunch of people and you get 10 people to build the trench with you, right? You look at teamwork, not just I'm going to drive through and get myself done. But there are certain times whenever you're going to have elevated cortisol levels to where you actually need to grit your teeth and get through a project, right? Or you need to stay up late to get done with something. Typically, the reason we get to that point is because of a lot of other things that we shoved off, or we didn't look for connection and we didn't look for teamwork. So we end up putting ourselves in a bad position, or we prioritize other things. But yeah, no, that's something that the boomer generation really led into was, just grit your teeth and just fight through it. But that's why whenever you look at the current 60 to 65-year-old range, you're seeing dementia, you're seeing cancer, you're seeing high blood pressure, you're seeing heart attacks, heart disease, colon cancer, all of the things that mindset manifested. Now you're seeing it now. And the crazy thing is that all these people did that to retire, and now they're all retiring. Well, guess what? Whenever you retire, you die 15 years earlier, statistically. So don't work for retirement.
You're killing yourself just to die.
You're killing yourself just to die. It's crazy. It's nuts. There's a bunch of research out there on this right now whenever it comes to the boomer generation. A lot of them are retiring, and their entire identity was based off of their work, right? It wasn't based off of building relationships. It was based off of their tasks. The more relationships you have, the longer you will live because there's more people you can pour into. The more that you're focused on tasks, well, when you get to a point where you're not producing tasks anymore and you don't have any relationships, how much good did producing all those tasks do for you? Not good. That's why this is important. Being transparent is important. Opening up to people, looking for help, looking for feedback. It's a very important part. In my opinion, the reason I started with this is if you're going to have a team and you don't have transparency, it's not going to last long. If people aren't telling you where they're struggling, they're not going to last long. If people aren't able to share their opinions in healthy manners, not going to last long. If people don't feel like they're heard, if people don't feel like they can go express themselves, not going to last long. You'll lose a lot of good people that way. If you don't have transparency, you don't have a team. Period.